Learn, experiment, achieve, and take off. We're anthropologists and social scientists who put leaders under the microscope. We are your eyes and ears to dig up the most valuable insights for success to help make you and your business better. We give you the tools to lead your future and help build leaders we all want to look up to. So, rise to your potential. Launch. Welcome. I'm Rebecca Bennett, your host. When you combine education and technology, you get Elena Agaragimova from Dubai. She is changing the way people learn. Having grown up in the traditional education system like most of us, she saw its flaws in transferring into careers. She has made it her life's mission to scale learning so that people can have the skills they need to advance into fulfilling careers. She has worked in talent development around the world, so we know she has some good tips to share with us. I have a feeling we'll be learning a lot on this episode, so prepare yourself as I welcome Elena on the Launch Show today to discuss the business and future of education in the workplace. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great. I'm so happy to have you on the show today. Thanks for coming out. So let's dive straight into this. There's this huge talk and trend right now about the future of work. What is it? And a lot of people say we're already in it. The future of work is here. I want to know from your perspective, how do you envision the future of work, Elena?
Sure. And you're right. It's a big question these days because it's sort of accelerated everything that we thought we were going to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years. We're now doing it now. There's a lot of course, predictions about future work, but I think I just want to focus on the two most important ones that I see in our practice, essentially. So one is the whole idea of the T-shaped professional, right? So previously, we were kind of able to sort of be in that very specialist area, right? So if you're, for example, in the world of surgery or something really specific, you work into sending astronauts to the moon, etc. So unless it's a very specific kind of area of work, the rest of us, so people in finance, HR, marketing, even engineering, just general business leaders, we're now seeing a shift to a more T-shaped professional, meaning that being specialized in one area is no longer enough. So now we need to be specialized in one area, and then we also need to be able to sort of look at where we can also bring in expertise that perhaps outside of our specific work. So for example, within the learning and development, it's almost no longer enough to be only learning and development or only a trainer. You now need to have a specialty, which could be trainings, delivering training, but you need to understand content development. You need to understand creating learning journeys in a way that combines with behavioral science. You need to understand how to facilitate. You need to understand slightly of how you can use neuroscience in your work as well. For marketeers, we now see a lot of behavioral design in marketing as well. Previously, psychologists would sort of come in and do that job, but now looking at if you're in marketing, knowing social media, knowing behavioral design will probably add a lot of value. And we're seeing this more and more now with the whole COVID situation, where a lot of people have, been laid off, and they found themselves in a situation that they've been working in a certain area and that's all they know. And it's looking at transitioning outside of that becomes very difficult. So I think as the world of work kind of grows in the future, it's really going to be more kind to those who are able to specialize in different areas versus those that are very specialized in one area. And the second trend I would have to say is the whole impact on well-being. We see this, it's already been sort of going. I think COVID has again accelerated it, as it has so many other topics within the workplace. But the impact on well-being, meaning that we have younger generations that are coming and been coming into the workplace, who are now seeing a workplace is not something just to get a salary. They need to feel fulfilled. They need to have purpose. And so if they're with a company that doesn't provide them that, or they're not sure how to, what they're doing there for what purpose, that can have an impact on their well-being. We also have a huge numbers of anxiety, leavism, where people just don't know how to disconnect. Then we also have absenteeism, where they show up at work but they're not present at all because they're just too distracted with other things. Could be mental health challenges. So I think the whole well-being is going to grow significantly, and companies are going to be paying more and more attention to implementing initiatives to support their employee well-being. Otherwise, they're going to have a very hard time finding talent and sustaining it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right, considering that now we have the internet and so much more access to knowledge around the world. It almost feels inevitable that now everyone, in order to thrive in the workplace, that you have to have more than one specialty, because now it's accessible to you. There's so many online training programs and courses you can take to help further your career. People are starting to really understand that they have to go past the university level, past that bachelor's degree, sometimes even past the master's in some cases, and start to really hone their skills and go deeper. And yeah, I think you're right. I think this millennial generation has really brought up an awareness of workplace issues more so than I feel like other generations. So it's really perceptive of you. But I'm curious, coming back to building those extra specialties and skills, we all know that learning, it's hard to scale. And the best way that we've been able to do that as a society is to offer those university programs and certificate programs, and now the online learning video subscriptions. So what I want to understand, Elena, is how are you changing this? What is it that you're working on right now that you're bringing to the world in this area?
Sure. So what we're doing that's slightly different from that traditional approach is we're focusing on a modern way learner, meaning not the modern way in terms of the younger generations, modern way in the sense that the traditional approach of going into a class or going into a training in a corporate for 6 to 8 hours simply does not sustain knowledge. People do not sustain that knowledge. It is ineffective. Yet, companies globally, the multinationals globally spend $395 billion every year, according to, I think it was Harvard Business Review that published this. They spend it on learning and development, yet the ROI of it is almost non-existent. So we cannot track it. We cannot do anything with it. So it's almost just, to me, it's just wasting money. And at the same time, doing it in a way that, people also feel pressure because they have to go through this training, they have work on their mind, they're not retaining information. And same thing for students, right? We have students that are studying majors that, like, for example, business administration is still one of the popular majors around the universities around the world. It's still one of the most driven, yet we know in business administration, you don't necessarily learn business, and, and it's not a sort of skill that you can take with you. So you learn maybe some important theories, but it's not an experience. So what we're doing essentially is we are making learning in a way that sticks. So we're helping people learn in a way that works for them and learn information that they want to learn. So this is where we incorporate micro learnings, and not only micro learnings where it's self-guided, we actually provide them with support. So human support. So there's a piece of AI, there's a piece of that online self-learning on the application, and at the same time, there's that human support. And the idea here is that in the world where we're continuously bombarded with information, we're saying, listen, you don't need to spend an hour or 2 hours learning, at least within the dimensions that we're teaching, right? You don't need 1 to 2 hours to learn emotional intelligence or creativity. You just need to work on 5 to 10 minutes every day. You access your little portal. You do your sort of things that you need to get done for that day, and then you go and you implement that. So it's more of an implementation. And we make it more accessible. So organizations don't need to put their team like in the room for 6 to 8 hours to learn something. We're saying, listen, take them out of the office, let them do it at their own time, at the comfort of their home. With technology, we can make it now accessible and affordable. It's much cheaper for companies to also implement these sort of technologies. Not to say that the face-to-face is not important. It is, but it doesn't need to be on the scale that it is today, because learning topics like emotional intelligence is very difficult to comprehend in a group. It's a very individual sort of learning journey in that sense. So we provide them with that access and support when they need it the most throughout their learning journey, to make sure it actually sticks and they know how to implement it.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I'm not sure why us as a society, we haven't figured this out yet, but yeah, just spending hours in a classroom, it's by the end of the day, you just don't retain very much. I think I read in a study somewhere that when employees get onboarded into a company, they retain, I'll have to confirm this after, but I think they retain something like, or no, they lose like at least 75%, if not more, of what they learned, which is just phenomenal. And if you think about it, like if you try to play those mind games or you try to memorize something, you can really only hold, I think it's like between like 3 or up to 7 pieces of information. So memorizing something like a phone number is really difficult for people these days, because that's 10 digits. And so to have that expectation that we're going to retain more than 7 solid pieces of information or nuggets in one sitting is seems a little unrealistic.
Absolutely. And you know, the way our brain learns is just not how, you know, before maybe we didn't have the science behind it, but now there's so much research on, from behavioral science to neuroscience to habit creation. There's so much research that tells us, listen, that's not how we retain information, right? And in addition to that, you know, with technology, again, companies and individuals can really individualize learning, meaning, you know, not to put everybody in a group to do a training on a particular topic or a particular study, right? But looking at who needs what level of that topic. And this is where technology really helps, because you can identify now at which level do people start. Some people will start at the basics, some medium, some might need a little bit different interaction. So, you know, individualizing the process of learning is what makes people stick and makes them come back to the type of platforms that sort of provide that. And this is what, you know, this is kind of what our mission is, to just sort of, you know, let companies and individuals know that there is a better way to learn, and we need to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. There are skills. I think most of the skills out there are ones that you would learn individually for yourself. And then there are a set of skills that maybe are appropriate for a group, like maybe negotiation skills you need someone to bat around with, or team building. But you're right, the majority of the skills are things that we can do on our own. So yeah, it allows you to really focus in and learn deeply, I think is the key. I'm curious, Elena, how did you get to this point of where you're at now in your career? If you can kind of just give us the backstory of how everything led up to where you are today.
Sure. So I actually come from a background of higher education and academia. And, you know, I changed my major about 5 times at the university because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And all I knew was, you know, I said, I really enjoy working with people. I'm a people-oriented person. I'm not a 9-to-5 person. I'm not a math person. And I would like to learn about different cultures. So of course there was no major for that. And I think at the age of 19, when people ask you to choose a major when you're not even sure what you're having for dinner that evening, is sort of, you know, it's just frustrating. And I think we're still applying the same thing. We're asking, you know, students to change majors at a very early age. And so I've started within higher education. I've kind of, because that was sort of close to what I enjoyed doing. Then I transitioned to learning and development. When I moved to Dubai in 2014, I really started more within the soft skills training, working with corporates, working with professionals and organizations to sort of help them thrive and perform at work. And then I met my business partner. And we have launched Bessern, which is our company. So we've combined forces because we really felt same experiences working with corporates in terms of well-being and productivity and what it really takes to learn. So this is where we've created Bessern, where we're helping essentially just transforming the way people learn in organizations. And it's been an interesting journey. So we are really excited to do what we do. And thought I would end up working with in a tech company, to be honest with you. I don't come from a tech background, but I think this is part of the sort of adjusting as well to what the world needs. And it's like you have a mission, and then how do you best deliver that mission, and technology is the way you do it these days. So a lot of learning curves there for me personally.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of people in your shoes where they weren't expecting they don't consider themselves technical, but you're enveloped into this world of technology, and you're right, you have to adapt and take your missions and apply it into that setting. So tell us more about Bessern and how does it work?
So Bessern we are the first Middle East digital solution to sort of help individuals learn organizations, meaning that through our platform, individuals can actually learn, they can track their learning, they can see improvements throughout, and they have access to support when they need it the most. So what we do is we combine AI. At this stage, AI is in a form of assessments that they take throughout sort of the different learning journeys that they follow. In addition to that, they have the sort of self-guided learning journeys that we call it change journeys. And finally, what sort of really kind of brings it all together is that human support, because AI is brilliant in many ways, but AI cannot substitute the human interaction that we often need when we're learning. So it's essentially also it's providing organizations with some sort of measurable way to see are there people engaged, how engaged are they? They can actually track their progress as well. So it gives them a measurable outcome essentially for their investment in their employees.
Gotcha. So I love that, how you're supplementing the AI with the actual human touch. I really feel like that's so important. That's the way that we really should be looking at how to use AI rather than necessarily just to replace. I know that initially when AI was on the rise, the talk of AI was on the rise, the headlines in the articles were like, these robots are going to replace you. And it was really just the really wrong outlook and message to be sending to society, because I think that almost slowed the advancement of the technology down, because people were scared and they're like, we don't want this in our lives. But then people like you and me, where we see opportunities for how it can come into the world and supplement or augment how we work. And it can really help change our lifestyles and our working lifestyles, and the rate of progress that AI can allow our society is just phenomenal to think about. They say that this new wave of technology is really going to push society forward in a way that's much greater than the Industrial Revolution. So it's a very exciting time to be in. You mentioned that you use AI along with the assessments. Can you dive a little deeper into how that works?
Sure. So for people who use our platform, essentially, it's based on the different dimensions. So the AI essentially evaluates individuals on the different dimensions and provides them sort of areas where they need to improve. This is how we're using it right now. However, as with technology, it's continuously learning, continuously getting smarter. So what's on our roadmap essentially is using AI to forecast learning needs, using AI to sort of predict challenges on user well-being. So basically predicting mental health challenges that might be upcoming. What do I mean by that is that with the technology that's out there right now, and what we're looking to incorporate very soon, is that an AI can identify, how are you doing in terms of your mental well-being, or particular dimensions you're exploring and learning about. How are you doing on that level? And they can track it by the way you're typing, by the sound of your voice. So when you are interacting on the platform, let's say with that human support on the platform, it can actually learn from that and pick up signals, and can then send you nudges to say, listen, this, have you thought about this? Or how are you doing today, essentially, and helping you navigate challenges before they occur. So the AI is so brilliant, and we have yet to even really understand the impact of AI on how we function. But there's a huge potential for AI to sort of predict the learning needs, if I were to point out two things, the learning needs and any mental health challenges or well-being that you might come across. So if it sees that your level of interaction on certain days is different from others, it might sort of say, maybe maybe today you need to focus on a little bit easier tasks. It can also identify the times when you are most active versus less active. So there's so many different ways. It can read your facial features and let you know how are you feeling today and what you should be focusing on for that day and what you should be avoiding. So it's really, really brilliant.
That's great. Yeah, just the idea of being able to give people that do have mental health conditions, however mild or severe, give them that access to learning and be able to accelerate that for them. I think is such an opportunity, and it really can integrate those people into the workplace in a far better way. Because the AI does have that capability to pay that individual attention. I feel like as society, we want to just generalize and put blanket statements across everyone and group them all together just because it's easier for categorization purposes. But to be able to give to individual needs is so important, especially when it comes to learning. I'm curious though, AI it's not an easy technology to work with. There's a lot involved, to be very analytical, know how to read data, mine data, all that stuff. And I'm curious, not every organization has been successful in implementing their AI. They've come across many challenges in developing this new technology. I want to understand, where is it that you have had challenges with the AI? Where have the sticking points been with your company and developing this technology?
Sure. So for us, I think an important part to mention is also could be for any organization, the whole idea of privacy concerns when it comes to AI. I think that's what's going to be one of the challenging things for anybody who's utilizing AI, and it has been a challenge. That's a very sensitive area that we need to be careful with. But AI is great at nudging users, right, to continue in their change journeys. But it needs to be coupled with the human interaction. So that is one thing I think AI will not be able to do, is to replace that human interaction, as much as technology is out there. So I don't know if it's a challenge. I think it's just understanding that we need to make sure that we have AI and it's brilliant and the value that it brings. But the challenge is that it's never going to replace that human. So making sure we incorporate that human interaction has been our biggest learning, at least so far, from some of the challenges when it comes with using it. So I think it's just having that empathetic support, the human support through our app, which is part of our current version at the moment. And I think that is the important aspect, because the challenge, I don't think AI will ever be able to do that. Maybe, never say never, but not in the near future, at least I don't think.
Yeah. Privacy is definitely a large concern, and I know that there are institutions, organizations working on creating security standards to make sure that users do have that privacy, and then organizations then adhere or comply with those standards. And I think that's important, not only to comply, but to be a part of that conversation on how to protect privacy and developing those standards, because that moment is now. We're setting the bar now, and if we set it too low, and then people, bad people start jumping over and causing chaos, then that's no good. So we want to definitely set that bar high enough so that we can protect people's privacy. And then that's really interesting how you talk about figuring out ways when you're implementing the AI technology. It's not just all about the technology. It's so true. It's about incorporating life around it, such as the human component. How do we respond to it? How do we work with it? How do we react to it? Thinking of all those scenarios to best use that technology is important. I understand that the app that you're working on, Bessern, it was quite a learning curve in itself for you. And so what I want to talk about now is what are some learnings that you came away with in building this app?
So with, working with individuals over the years, the creation of learning journeys, creating that content, doing research was sort of the fun part and the easy part. There's so many learnings out there, again, that we've incorporated into this. The difficult part is that you need to step out from this creator mode because you're in it, you know what the app does, you know what it's supposed to do, and you understand the value of it. But then how do you translate that to a great user experience? And you don't even realize it until you step out and you're like, my gosh, how can I use this app? So we have pivoted maybe at least twice when we're developing the app, because we said, if I'm a user, I don't know, like, what should I do with the app? So I think stepping out of your own mind, and between my business partner and I, who basically we're solely working on it, just the two of us essentially, with of course support of the tech team. But when you're the sort of creators, that was the difficult part, is how do we create that user experience where people view our app as their friend that they want to come back to every day, to do that habit, to implement that routine, to create that new positive change. And that's one aspect. And another one is also, because the way we're doing it is a little bit different from what people are used to, we're saying, listen, 5 to 10 minutes a day, you do this, you follow these steps. When you complete each sort of module of vitamin, we call them vitamins. So when you complete this sort of vitamin, when you take your vitamin that day, you are going to get better each day, right? And at the same time, if you're still not sure, you have support. So sort of explaining and sharing knowledge about how the 5 to 10 minutes learning journeys each day that you do can help you achieve results that you're looking for is another sort of thing that we've learned about. So I think it's just, we had to continuously upskill ourselves. For me, it was very technical upskilling. For my business partner is a little bit more technical than I am. So continuously upskilling, continuously doing research. There's so much information that's coming out. The new AI learnings from AI that are coming out. So it's just keeping up with all of that to, at the end of the day, to create a great user experience. That is, I think, one of the sort of learning takeaways, is that you need to step out of your own mindset and put yourself in the shoes of the customer, essentially. So we've gone through a lot of trial and error and interviews and testing when we were developing the app.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to manage, to step from your creative role, like with your business hat on, then all of a sudden transfer over to your customer hat. It's hard to step back and forth, but I'm sure as you're doing it more frequently, it becomes easier. I'm curious if there's a specific methodology or framework or some kind of method you use to translate all your ideas and about your learning programs and journeys, a specific method you use to translate that into a user experience or tool.
So our methodology sort of is a combination of different sort of pillars. So we are using a lot of proven methods from positive psychology about how change is implemented on an individual level. We use a lot of neuroscience-based evidence, behavioral science, the habit creation. So what we're essentially doing is putting it together in a way that says, yes, if you do this really small step each day, it's going to create that change for you. So it's focusing a lot on habit creation, using all this different research that's out there about how do you actually make learning stick? How do you make it that people come back to the platform? So all of these combined, essentially, we came up with the Bessern methodology, which is the micro learnings with the human interaction.
Yeah, I think you're right with oftentimes as an entrepreneur, I have a lot of big goals and dreams. And throughout the day, I find myself, I'm just grinding and grinding. I'm like, when am I going to see the end of this? Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? And so having those long-term goals, this is something that I do. I'm sure maybe a lot of our listeners do as well, is I play games in between, like as a break of my day. Why? Because it's like a short-term win. Like, boom, I won a game and it took me like, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, and it feels really good. So I can almost see your Bessern and using that shorter learning technique is a great way to just get a quick win in your day and feel really good about it. Almost, I guess, like gamifying learning in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what it does is that it doesn't rely on motivation, because motivation is, it's not something we sort of talk about in our practice, because we don't necessarily believe in motivation as motivation. We believe in those small steps you can take that equal to progress, and progress then keeps you motivated. So it nudges you to keep going, and it gives you that good feeling when you do something, and like I said, it's a small win. So a small win every day will make you want to come back and do that small win that then gets to those big goals. And another thing, what we implement in the platform is we say, don't look at the month ahead. We're implementing it in 10 days at a time. So 10 days to focus on a particular vitamin that you need to take each day in order for you to start learning how to practice it more and more. And then it gives you an option to continue if you need a little bit more, or to move on to the next vitamin within the dimension that you are learning. So it's you're absolutely right. It's all about the short wins and progress over motivation, over those, the anxiety that comes with the big goals.
I think when you said you're implementing learning in like a 10 days, I immediately thought of like a tunnel. And in 10 days, like you can see the light at the end of that tunnel. You can see yourself getting through it and like finishing that vitamin. But if you're like in an MBA program like I was for 3 years, it's like, okay, where's the light at that end of the tunnel? Is it there? I don't see it. You have to just have faith. So you mentioned to me earlier, I think you said you're sponsored by United Arab Emirates government. And so that's just fascinating in itself. I would like to learn more about your journey of how you got into that position.
Absolutely. So UAE in general is very big on well-being and happiness. So they have a whole ministry dedicated to well-being. They have a whole ministry dedicated to happiness. So they are, they're very supportive of social enterprises, essentially. So, and because we are around the topics of productivity and social well-being, we actually pitched ourselves to be part of one of their programs, one of their social incubators, and there was several rounds, and we were selected as one of the 10 the top startups that sort of made it. So it was really interesting. We got very lucky in terms of learning that there are such initiatives. So there's quite a few around the UAE that are provided for entrepreneurs within this space, because and even the way they handle the whole COVID situation in terms of keeping people safe and taking care of their mental well-being throughout the situation, they're just really great with these sort of initiatives. So there's a lot of support from them here. So we just pitched ourselves. They loved the idea. They've supported us throughout our journey, and here we are.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on getting that far with it. So I'm going to divert a little bit. So you mentioned that UAE, they have this Ministry of Happiness, and I know when I traveled to Copenhagen, they have something similar where the happiness of the people is really important, and that's why a lot of the Scandinavian countries are considered the happiest places on earth. And I know Dubai is up there with them. But I'm curious, what are some of the things that UAE has been doing to help make that happiness for its people?
Sure. So, for example, well, speaking of technology, they do a really good job implementing technology in all of their services. So, government services, for example, to go, the sort of version of the DMV in the States, right? which is the RTA here, the Road Transportation Authority. It is one of the smoothest experience you can experience. Literally anything you need to get done, if you cannot do it online, you go there, you spend 5 to 10 minutes, whatever the task is, and it's done. It's very smooth, it's very fast. So I think implementing technology across all their government sectors to help people manage their visa situation, because there's 85% of expats live here. So to manage all of that, I think they've done a really good job. They also make sure that there are initiatives around the city to really bring communities together. They do really well at organizing different volunteering communities and marathons, which are very fun for many people here. It's like a whole festival here. They're also, of course, continuously looking to improve the way the city functions in general. So it's the city, as right now, for example, it's very hot throughout the summer. So about 4 months, it's very difficult to be outside and the heat is very high. So I think providing options to maintain our well-being by having covered spaces where people can entertain, a lot of family-oriented activities to kind of keep kids engaged as well. I think they're really good at providing that. And another thing is it's one of the safest countries around the world right now. To a point where I don't know how many times I've had visitors and they have lost their cell phones or left their cell phone somewhere and it would be returned to us 2 hours later. Literally, like you can easily, the taxi driver will find you, they will come to you, they will give it to you. So it's safe from all aspects. You can easily go outside at 2 a.m., take a walk anywhere in Dubai and feel completely safe. Which personally adds a lot of happiness to my life if I'm able to just feel safe in a country. So they do different initiatives within the space. Yeah.
Well, that's really fascinating. Yeah, I think looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, making sure that safety and security, if that first level is there, is super important. It sounds like UAE is really knows what they're doing, and I feel like America has a lot that they could take away from that in terms of learnings. Just looking at UAE as the model, I would love for that to happen over here in America. Imagine not standing in the DMV for like 2 hours straight. Oh, what a dream!
Every time I go back to the States, I'm like, how are we still here? What are we doing? Yeah. So yeah, so they do a good job here with that. Absolutely.
Oh, that's great to hear. So I'm also wanted to understand for a lot of our listeners, they're global, they're all over the world, but we do have a big chunk over here in America. And I want to understand, what is it like doing business in United Arab Emirates, and specifically compared to America, since I know you've been in both countries?
In the UAE, what's really nice in one way, what's really effective is that it's a small country at the end of the day. The population is 10 million. 1 million of those are locals, the Emiratis, and the rest are expats. And it's a very fast-paced city, just like any other sort of big city. But what makes it really unique here, I think, is that people are very approachable in a sense. It's very easy to make connections, which are so vital for business. It's quite easy to get a meeting. It's quite easy to get introductions, to meet people in general for business. So there's a lot of events that take place. It's a very active place. It's a very small place. So, and because I think people are coming from all over the place, it's a beautiful place to people. I feel like people are a little bit more accessible, essentially. And again, I think because it's, we're all expats here, we're all visitors here for some time being, right? So I think it's just that notion that we're all here for a purpose and to grow and to add value to the community and to do business. So we see it as, let's collaborate. So there's a lot of collaboration that happens in the UAE. Another great thing about UAE is that it's so central. It's so central to Europe, to Asia, to Africa. So a lot of companies here, you can be based here and navigate your business to all the different areas. There are plenty of people who call it home and then do business in other parts of the world. And that opens up opportunities for your business as well. It's a little bit closer to the rest of the world compared to the US. And finally, I think what makes it interesting is the influx of different cultures. And in the US, it's very much the same as well, especially in big cities. But here, so many people, there's just such a continuous flow, you know, in and out of different people, that you're meeting so many people from, you know, different nationalities that are really fresh from their countries, right? So it's not like they're Americanized in any way, like in the US, many people are already Americanized. But here you really get very fresh perspectives on, and really learn cultural intelligence, understand how to do business from different, with different backgrounds of cultural backgrounds. I think that you get a lot of rich experience in that way, which then can drive your business forward, because you get this learning experience, and then you can do business in Singapore or Shanghai, or anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I think that it sounds like, because you guys do have such a large expat community, that having that cultural intelligence really allows you to, it seems like a great place to create, say, a global or multinational business, because you have that opportunity to understand the world better and from that single location, not necessarily having to travel to every single country quite as often. That's really great. I'm curious about, if you're an entrepreneur and you wanted to start a business in UAE, how much time would it take to necessarily start up a business? Are there any kind of regulations or barriers that people would need to think about?
Yeah, so it's very simple, actually. It can take you, depending on the sort of business and the licensing and the approvals you need, just a few days. You can start a full-on business. There's a lot of options in free zones. So free zones are one of the easiest way to sort of set up a company here. A lot of virtual offices available. You know, you can do as a virtual offices. You can rent a desk, so it's affordable as well in that sense. It's very easy process. It does not require a lot of paperwork. They also offer support. So where I've set up in the free zone, where we've set up the business is where they actually supported, they've promoted, they connected with me with media partners. So they really offered further support, being part of their community. They open up leads for me, they do PR for me, and that's all part of the sort of the package that comes with it. So it's quite simple in that way. It's just a couple of days. You go through your visa application, your medical testing, and you're good to go. You can practice business.
Oh, that's great. I'm curious what the restrictions are for the visa. Like if someone was coming from, say, America and they wanted to set up shop, like how long can they actually stay there?
So the stay depends on the passport holder, where you're coming from. If you're coming from the US, I think you can stay, I forget now, but it's about 3 months. I think you can stay on a visitor's visa. You don't need a visa. If you're a US citizen, you don't need a visa to come to the UAE. You just come, and you can stay without the visa. I mean, you can stay on a tourist visa, I think 3 months. It used to be 6 months. I think it's now 3 months. Different countries like UK, I know it's 3 to 6 months. US, a lot of European countries, it's the same. Some other countries, it's maybe 1 month. So you have plenty of time to sort of set that up, but you can start the setup even before you come. So you just get online, talk to representatives of the different free zone. You can compare prices, do your research, and then when you come here, you can you just go through your testing, etc., and then you just transfer your visa, and you are a resident.
Were you born in the UAE, or are you an expat?
No, I'm an expat. I came here in 2014. I'm actually from Dagestan, which is a republic in south of Russia. And then I spent some part of my life in St. Petersburg, Russia. I moved to the US when I was a kid, which then became home and what I call home today. And but yeah, UAE, 7 years and counting.
Oh, wow. So it seems like it's a great place to stay. You found your home.
Yes, for now, it's definitely a beautiful place to be.
So Elena, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the Launch podcast today and sharing with us all of your insights around the micro-learning strategies that you've implemented with Bessern and all the other goodies that you've shared with us. If our listeners wanted to follow you and learn more about what you're doing or get in touch, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. So the best way to connect with us is you can check out our website, which is bessern.co, Bessern.co. We have also a lot of free resources for people, so check out the freebies on the website. I think they're going to open up eyes and minds. Also, LinkedIn is a great way to connect. We are very active as Bessern on LinkedIn, and individual as well. Feel free to connect with me as well. So I think these are the two sort of best ways to touch base with us.
Excellent. Well, I'm pretty sure our listeners will be visiting your website and checking out more about what you're doing, because it seems very fascinating and innovative on the edge. And I'm fully supportive of what Bessern is doing. It seems like a great way to kind of upskill or reskill, especially during these COVID times where people now have that opportunity to focus a little bit more on self-development and professional development. And thank you, Elena, for coming on the show. And that's a wrap.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to download the next episode so you can listen to it on your next commute or trip. You can access more great insights and other goodies on our website at launchitspot.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there, which will notify you when we post the new goods. And of course, we always appreciate shares and likes by our listeners. Did you know that you can be featured on Launch? We are always looking for interesting people who are striving to become better leaders, as well as subject matter experts in any of our content categories listed in our nav bar. Believe it or not, your story can inspire so many people. All you have to do is quickly apply on our website and we'll be in touch. Now, how are you going to lead the world?